Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Coach and Benway podcast. I'm Coach Redpill, joined as always by my co-host, Dr. Benway. And we are going to be doing something different. Starting this Saturday, when this episode is airing, we're going to be doing, every Saturday, sort of like a discussion of the contingent news events. Because sometimes, we want to talk about contingent news events during the episode, but, we're talking about something random or something specific, and it's kind of like hard to wedge in the contingent news. And so we figured that we just segregate it all to just the one episode every week. So from here on out, the Saturday episode is going to be about contingent news, and let's just dive right into it. The thing that had me freaked out, well, first of all, good day, good morning, Dr. Benway. How are you going? How are you doing?
Oh, it's going well. I can't wait to talk about all the stuff that happened. It's like, the question is, what didn't happen this week? Oh, I know what didn't happen this week. The world got better and we got happier with everything. Yeah, that didn't happen. Yeah.
Oh,
fuck.
Jesus.
Fuck. I was one day.
Yeah, you're just hoping that one day that, that 1 week would be a happy week, that it would be a happy thing and that everything would be wonderful. Well, no, it was kind of awful in many regards. I think the saddest thing was this murder of this girl, Mollie Tibbetts. She disappeared, and inevitably 3-4 days later, her body was found. This is out in Iowa. And this poor young woman, she was killed by apparently the boyfriend of an acquaintance of hers. And this boyfriend is, of course, an illegal immigrant. And he's been in the United States for 4 years, and he still doesn't speak the language. And his trial is becoming incredibly politicized. In just the few short days that this has become a news item, the lawyer for this guy has made it a point to politicize this because, for instance, he's trying to get a gag order to make sure that the news does not report him as an undocumented migrant, which legally speaking, that term doesn't even exist.
They refer to him as a local Iowa resident because, they wanted you to get the impression that it was a guy named Cletus who went after a little girl. Yeah. And he was such a white misogynist, but oh no, it was somebody else.
Yeah, it was one of the brown people. Yeah.
It's all a fucking joke. And let's just get that out of the way right at the pack. And the other thing, both sides have to kind of acknowledge, even though we still play this little rhetorical card. It was like, why are they politicizing a girl's death?
Well,
we live in a polis.
Yeah.
We live in a polis. Everything's politicized, my friends. Of course, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
That's just, let's just drop that fucking canard right away.
Well, I like to think that, me being on the right, I'm above politics, and it's those grubby little leftists who do it. And so I have to get down in the mud to fight them, wrestle with them in the mud. But yeah, let's fucking politicize this fucker. Look, poor young woman. Let's get that right off the table. This is a tragedy for her and her family, and I have nothing but compassion for her family, and just, this is dreadful. That being said, this guy was an illegal immigrant. The guy was in the United States for 4 years. He didn't even speak the language. He had knocked up the friend of this girl. Okay, and that, of course, speaks to other issues of class that we don't want to really get into, of course, because he knocked up the friend of this dead girl, right? And they weren't married or anything like that. And so, and the girl was white, okay, the pregnant girl. So you sort of instantly infer what sort of social class we're talking about. But everybody on the coasts and everybody in the culture war has lighted on this case. And what I find interesting is how the press is just trying to twist this all around. They're doing their darndest to turn it all around. Well, you had your mini rant. What do you think of this situation? Do you think it's going to continue or what?
Here's the thing. For things like this, I've gone above and beyond thinking that the story in and of itself is going to lead to anything. And I've seen that case in San Francisco where a woman was literally killed on the Embarcadero by an illegal immigrant, and the guy kind of walked off, the accusations.
Yeah.
Why not? And so my take on this rather is it'll be telling as to what people don't do. Mm-hmm. Right. Because we all have our little things. There's this general assumption that I think people operate under, which is, oh, if something gets into the public light and we talk about it, that's a victory. No, it's not. It's part of the performance piece of society as we have. And this is another piece of it, to the extent to which the little details of this case are what are interesting to me. One is I've seen a couple of places, not anything super mainstream, but enough, notifications that said, well, don't blame illegal immigrants for this. Blame misogyny. Because he was clearly a man chasing a woman and he wanted to do something to her.
Yeah.
Whatnot. Of course, you can pivot this any way you want. The other detail we found out is this girl who was killed. You go back to her Twitter timeline, and she, I guess, was a left-leaning person, and had indicated in a tweet. I don't know if I can't recall if this is real. I feel like it is. If not, someone will correct me. But basically, like, I fucking hate white people,
She had said that? Oh, man.
She had tweeted it in response to something. I don't know. Like I said, if that turned out to be a bogus tweet, so be it. Someone could point it out to me. But here's the thing. I mean, that variation is going to happen more and more, right? The internalization of your own corruptedness, right? It will weaken you in advance of someone, regardless of their motivation, who does want to do you harm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that will continue. As to whether or not this narrative, shifts action on anything, actions speak louder than words, and inertia is the most powerful force on the planet when it comes to politics. I don't think anything's going to move under the current conditions, and this certainly doesn't seem to be a weighty enough issue to spur large political action. Frankly, I've seen bigger versions of this story spur people to couch sitting. So I'm not really.
Yeah. I mean, this is a one more blip on the storyline. Yeah, because I agree. This isn't like a massacre like Sandy Hook, where it just so happened that that dreadful incident of the killing of all those children was the perfect opportunity for a political action group to swing into action and pick up some of these people like David Hogg, some of the victims of this shooting, and elevate them and push a narrative. That was, yeah. Here, nobody's ready to swing into action, and there is no conservative political action group that's ready to swing into action. I'm kind of surprised. I mean, I'm kind of surprised that there isn't a more organized group of people who are like, see, and they just swing in with a whole, media machinery and all the rest of it. But be that as it may, I think that the poor Mollie Tibbetts thing it's going to be gone and forgotten. But I guess what it's this story and the story in Vox about the South African farmers, because our president, basically our president's Twitter feed dictates the news cycle. Let's just face facts, right? And he said in a tweet that he wanted Secretary of State Pompeo to look into South Africa's situation and how the farmers are being killed and expropriated. And that expropriation started this past week. This expropriation without compensation. And here is the thing. Everybody on the left press, lighted on Trump's story insofar as the tweet is concerned. And they all basically said that it was a conspiracy theory, except even as it's happening, because it is happening, right? And the sine qua non of this approach of the mainstream media was Vox. Because in the Vox article, they said that the whole thing is a right-wing, the expropriation of land by the black majority government of white farmers was a white nationalist conspiracy theory. And then they went on and they literally said, even if it were true, even though it is true. Okay, I was like, what the hell?
Well, what they said whether or not it's true is irrelevant.
Oh yeah,
and that was the last line of the piece. He no doubt was trying to make a point that says, well, this is clearly being used by people who are not good. I mean, that was the ADL's position as well. They said, it's truly shocking that the president used white nationalist talking points against this. It's like, they can't deny it, though. Yeah. I said directly to them, deny it if you believe it to be false. They won't deny it. They can't deny it.
Yeah.
But the closest they'll ever come is to say, well, statistically, the rate of the white farmer death is this, but the rate of, black folks in the cities of South Africa is higher. And my response is that's the wrong comparison point. The comparison point is what the white farm death was at a certain point in time versus what it is now. And if it's growing, then that suggests something to you. Just because some, chimp outs happen in the city and they can't keep themselves alive because they're fucking ignoramus creatures, it's not really my problem.
Yeah.
I will phrase it that harsh way because that's basically what they've become when they come and seize the farms. And it's above and beyond a normal, I'm going to get something out of a rich guy. The level of mutilation and cruelty that is happening there is above and beyond material gain.
Yeah.
So I think you have to recognize the level of escalation that's already happened.
Yeah.
And the people in this country who are so adamant about calling it a white nationalist talking point don't give a fuck one way or the other. Their main concern is to say, these neo-Nazi people who don't like Jews, they're going to say bad things. They've said bad things about me in the past. And I can't allow them anything they say to be a good thing, really.
Yeah.
That's why I can't take any of this discussion seriously. And why I am certain, while I can be hopeful for the president, I don't think just having a tweet that says, we're going to consider looking into this, very much interest to me. It's only interesting to me when the murders in South Africa stop or the South African farmers escape to safer territories. Everything else is a fucking lame joke. Yeah. And when I see people like Lauren Rose say, do you guys believe what happened? The president's talking about this. It's like, if that's your sense of victory, you're fucking useless to me. I don't give a shit about talking about it. People already have exposed the bias. People have already exposed that they are more than happy to see us dead. The National Review put National Review already had an article back in the election that says the rural white population is better off dying. What more do you need to expose? The only thing that matters now is stopping it. Talking is irrelevant.
From what I understand, the South African situation, Australia and I believe Russia are welcoming them with open arms, especially Russia. They really want those South African farmers because they're very hardworking, industrious people. And the Russians are, from what I understand, they are setting up a program where they're basically going to give them free land in exchange for them farming it and investing in it and setting up like a farmer's bank of some sort to facilitate low interest loans because farming requires credit because it's a capital intensive business.
Yes.
But the thing is, what bothers me the most about this whole situation, the Boers were there first. If those of you who don't know South African history, and why should you, the Boers, that is the Dutch settlers, they were there in South Africa first. And they pushed out I believe they were the Hottentots, and they pushed them out and sort of like established a beachhead in what is now Cape Town. And they slowly took over the country. And then the Bantus came. And the Bantus were who now dominate all of sub-Saharan Africa. The Bantus were a tribe that originated in like the armpit of Africa, where Niger is now. And they slowly started to expand. The Bantu started to expand and wipe out everybody that they came in their path. And they just grew and grew. And so what we consider Africans today, the stereotypical sub-Saharan African, he's a Bantu for the most part. Okay, and you can tell the difference. I mean, you see people from, say, Ethiopia or Somalia, and they look different from the Bantus. The Bantus are the ones who have taken over South Africa, but they came after the Dutch settlers. So the white guy was there first, okay? And the Bantus, who are now in control of the ANC, well, they're going to wipe out the white people. I don't understand why they don't think so. The only people who seem to realize this is the Jewish population of South Africa, because they've halved in the last 25-odd years. They've split because they know that they have no future in South Africa and that it's only just a matter of time. And here, of course, is the sunk cost fallacy, whereby you have been in some piece of land in some area for so long and your roots go so deep that you are unwilling to cut your losses and just move to someplace else because you figure that, maybe it'll get better. And of course, it won't get better. It'll just continue to get worse. I fully expect the white minority to be wiped out. I mean, like genocided within 10 years. They're going to do a Zimbabwe kind of thing of like, take away all the land from the white South African farmers, and they're going to mismanage it. And they're going to suffer, catastrophically because of it. The whites who remain, well, the more well-off whites will leave for sure, and the poorer whites will be stuck, and they'll probably be genocided. I mean, that's what I honestly think is going to happen. I mean, it looks exactly like Zimbabwe. Remember, Zimbabwe, formerly Rhodesia, was the breadbasket of Africa, and now it is a basket case. It is a complete disaster, with hyperinflation in the trillions, and they have famines. They have famines in the breadbasket of Africa, okay? All because of, redistribution and all the rest of it. So that's the black pill moment on so far as South Africa is concerned. But I'm wondering, when will it be that the mainstream media can no longer lie about South Africa? Or do you think that they're going to just continue lying?
When there are no white people left is when they'll stop lying.
Oh.
When you can't hide when there's no one else to hide, when there are no bodies left alive to tell the story, then they could say, "Oh, well, shit
happens."
Or they'll have no reason for it at that point. Frankly, the only intelligent response to South Africans now, in my mind, would be to not just leave or to depart, but to poison all remaining land's food and water supplies so that no one will ever get to survive in the land. It seems that's the level of existential crisis the white farmer has faced to it. I mean, and when you say, there's certainly a sunk cost fallacy, we should leave. Well, I mean, a lot of humans have psychologically tied themselves to lands in perpetuity. It's part of what gives you your national narrative. I mean, if you want to be like the ever transient population, of which I don't need to name who they are, you can just see how it denatures you into a sort of, corrupting creature in some regards. And, is that the alternative you really want? I mean, and if you're faced with such an existential death, because frankly, no matter where the Boers go, they will likely collapse into the general population of wherever in the next few generations without their old lands and narratives anchoring them.
Yeah.
So my response is, if you're going to go out, you take as many people with you. Don't allow the creatures who destroyed your life to go unscarred and unpunished.
Yeah. If they move, then the issue becomes, should they stay and die and exact some measure of revenge even as they disappear, or should they move and survive, even if perhaps they will become assimilated into wherever they move to? Which is a better fate? I think
every individual person was going to try and negotiate what they think is best. The fact that many aren't leaving suggests that they do have investment in the lands that they have cultivated and that their predecessors have cultivated. Others have left who've come to the conclusion that that's appropriate. I think, the South Africans certainly won't figure out how to farm on their own. They would have done that by now.
Yeah.
And the best, I would hope for is to fully quarantine this decomposing, rotting flesh of a society until it no longer poses a threat to itself or others, however you wish to define that.
Look, I don't think we have to quarantine South Africa, because nobody gives a shit about South Africa except because of the white people. Because for all intents and purposes, we don't care about the rest of Africa. We don't. We only care about what we can extract from Africa. Africa in and of itself is politically and culturally worthless. It's just, it's a shithole. And you can argue all kinds of reasons as to why, but there's nothing culturally interesting, nothing socially interesting. There's no reason to go to Africa except to go on a safari and take pictures of the pretty animals in the wild. But really,
this is above and beyond utilitarian reasons. This is Rome salting Carthage so that nothing will grow from it again. Level of existential dominance and revenge that needs to happen. That's really the only discussion to be had. Whether or not South Africa can do anything for anybody, no, it can't, because the people who could have done everything have been removed from the power. Now you just have people dancing, or kill the farmer, pow pow, like Malema or whatever his name is,
Yeah.
All you have to do is look at that and confirm all your worst suspicions about what the differentiations of cultures tend to be like.
Yeah.
Because it's above and beyond saying, oh, keep them, we don't have to worry about them, and saying, no, we will, we'll show you who's really in charge of this situation. But because we have no moral courage to do any of that, we don't allow it to happen, and we just sit and watch our fellow human beings be consumed in the most brutal kind of way. We have, this is why I always emphasize the importance of the writer J.G. Ballard when he said, your notions of, you're such a surrealist writer. He says, I keep telling you that Western society is the surreal society. He grew, he was in the East Asia during World War II. He says, that's the reality. This illusion of perfection and happiness and happy harmony is the illusion and the surreal environment that you live in. And the only horror should be when the surrealism stops, because then you'll be caught into the world of cruelty and unpleasantness.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's this book I'm ordering, by the way, called The Demon in Democracy, Totalitarian Temptations in Free Societies. And it's basically written by a Polish anti-communist. And don't let the title fool you. It's really not. What it's basically saying is that liberal democracy is an ideology no different from fascism and communism, and that there are a lot more similarities between liberal democracy and fascism and communism than you would think. And ultimately, the fact is we are living under an ideology that it is so individualistic that it loses sight of the forest completely. It's just staring at one tree as opposed to looking at the overall health of the forest. And I don't know. I guess I'm very confused because I realize where this is going, and it's just all black-pilled all the way. And on the one hand, my naturally more optimistic point of view tries to fight this descent into black-pilldom. And because we realize, without having to be explicit about it, we realize where this is going. This is going into some sort of, nightmare cataclysm, right? And I'm trying to figure out a way that this can be stopped and something can be salvaged of our society and our culture. But I don't see it. I just really don't see it. Did you see the pictures from Paris, by the way? And did you hear that they're going to erect a glass barrier around the Eiffel Tower? Did you hear that?
I heard about the glass barrier. I didn't know what specific pictures you're referencing, although I can figure it out very quickly. It's not a challenge.
Well, yeah, it matters to me because I used to live in Paris. I lived in Paris in 2011, 2012, and I lived in the 9th arrondissement, and which is near the opera, and it's very central. It's very fashionable, very nice, and they were showing, streets. It's what happened. It struck me, of course, because I used to live near there, or actually there. And they were showing streets where I would go and walk and go to the supermarket and where I did my day-to-day. It was all around the Church of the Madeleine. And, it's full of immigrants. They're camping out. It's like an open-aired... it's a disaster. And it's like, what the fuck is happening with the French? That they are just allowing this.
It's very easy to see what happened. They took Africa and they put it on the streets of Paris.
Basically, okay? And, they have mattresses and filth all over the place. People just peeing everywhere, It's just to the point that they have to create these, like, public urinals, okay? It's just basically like a plastic container where people just, like, it's basically a plastic bucket, bigger than an ordinary bucket, so that these savages don't, like, do God knows what with it. But it's basically that, and it's just horrifying. The City of Lights, the epitome of refinement and all the rest of it, and it's just this. It's becoming not just third world; it's becoming Africa. It's becoming post-colonial Africa. I cannot believe it. I found it shocking. Okay, and that's why the visceral reaction to it. I mean, yeah, they're doing this glass walls around the Eiffel Tower. Sure, You could argue that this and that, but I suppose the real news for me was those images of, these illegal migrants just sleeping everywhere, and the police are terrified of going into whole swaths of Paris. How's that going to end? Oh man.
Well, what that was pretty much how Italy was, and to a certain extent is now before the election.
Yeah.
And Matteo Salvini is very adamant on trying to basically push it all out of the country one way or another. He's certainly, working to the extent that he can to get that done. It's certainly not an easy task, but that's what's essentially going to happen in the best of circumstances. The worst of circumstances is that the infection basically reaches the brain and then takes over the host.
Well, I think I think we're past that point. I think that the infection has taken over the brain, and the host is a goner. Okay.
It's more than just having policies that allows for more and more migrants. It's when the foreign-born population takes over the country en total, right? I mean, remember, France is a nuclear power. Yeah. So, as I've always said, France will be the first Muslim country with a nuclear weapons.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. But we haven't seen the encroachment of Muslims into the political landscape in France as we have in England. I mean, we have the mayor of London and the Home Office secretary are both Muslims. I think
a lot more communities as well, like a lot of the local mayorships, right?
In France?
No, I'm sorry, in England, in the UK, yeah. So like Sheffield is one. Mm-hmm. There's a few others, and it's like, remember those images of the mayor of Sheffield where he has the mayoral, I guess, standard. It's the metal kind of, not a sash, but it's like a neck. I don't know what the right term of it. It's a badge of office, and he has that. Wearing somewhat distasteful or gangbangerish shits, standing on the desk of the mayoral office, and everything. We democracy now. That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah. I mean, like I think of, whenever I think of Sheffield, I always think of Def Leppard.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're a Sheffield band, right? And I was a huge Def Leppard fan back when I was a teeny bopper. And I always thought of Sheffield as white working class. Jesus Christ. So anyway, that seems to be the future. And and another future, just to pivot randomly with some news topic, is John McCain has decided not to continue with his brain cancer treatment. So this looks like the final stretch for that warmonger's descent to hell. Oh yeah, I think the devil is looking forward to that.
My certainly only hope is that he will embrace the divine justice for everything he's done. And I do think that that creature that whatever John McCain was, the human being that was John McCain, died in the Vietnamese prison cells, and the shadowy echo of that creature is the creature who's found no war. He hasn't found nothing about the destruction of this country he doesn't tacitly approve of. There will be a reckoning for him, and I think the cancer deserves the Congressional Medal of Honor.
I don't know about that, but what I do know is that it's he was a truly evil man. Okay, he really went out of his way to wreak havoc on the world, and he consistently sided with the forces that wanted violence. And I'm curious about that, trying to understand how a man like that, from that background, can become this. I mean, he knew what war meant.
I just told you that he was, after that prison situation.
No,
it was never the same thing. No, you dismiss it too easily. You think there has to be some magical thinking that has to happen, and this growth of a person and influence of money. No, there is an existential psychological breaking that has happened, and every war he's ever approved of is him trying to fight the gook that broke him.
Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe you're right. Yeah. Trying to relive that war and trying to win.
Trying to win that war, exactly. Exactly. Because there's something about a son, you think about it, was the son of an admiral, is that correct?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. Yeah. World War II admiral.
A very successful one.
My father had the success. I flew over and I was broken. I was captured. I was forced to do this, that, or the other. I had to hang my head in shame. I will find a war where I don't have to hang my head in shame. And unfortunately, there are a lot of our fellow Americans, a lot of people who just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong fucking time had to pay that so that he could find some sort of absolution for his defeat.
You know, I think you're right. Yeah, I think that fundamentally you're basically right. That it was, all of them were proxy wars for Vietnam. The ultimate irony.
And that's, to me, that may be one of the best examples of how much that war was a mistake. In part because the machinations of Jean McCain, yeah, it just sounds so much better. It's like a French villain in a Bond film. Jean McCain, yeah. M, we have to fight Jean McCain. Yeah. But
your mission, Ethan Hunt.
Exactly. But no, in all seriousness, that war continues to produce bad outcomes, right? For many of the participants who managed to have political careers. Think of the other, wonderful output of that war, John Kerry.
Oh yeah,
and all glorious things he's done.
Yeah,
all that. That. I mean, we've said it before, but it certainly goes to say it again. Perhaps with McCain finally accepting the inevitable, maybe we get to move a little bit further beyond. But it's hard to say that we'll ever learn anything from that war. The fact that John McCain continued to grow. I mean, his, the poison that entered his system, even when he dies, will kind of leak out into the next successor of him, right? I mean, there's always some prick like that in the wings to take on that argument, that position of our imperial ambitions and cause havoc amongst the world.
Yeah,
it's almost like a virus. It's like a virus.
Well, it's when you have when you're straddling near limitless power. Okay, and that's what the American military basically is. The temptation is overwhelming. And I think that it takes an enormously self-disciplined man to not simply say, screw it, this problem is so unwieldy, then let's just bomb the shit out of them and get it done. Because it's easy. It's an easy solution. Just press a button, and all this stuff is primed and ready. You have hundreds or thousands of people, really, who are prepared to launch a missile attack, prepared to launch, the latest planes off the aircraft carrier and bomb the shit out of whatever you want. So it's easier to press the button than to hop on the plane, fly out there, and shake the hand of the son of a bitch you have to negotiate with and try to talk it out. It's just easier. And, so there's always going to be people who are going to, reach for the imperial power first, as opposed to any kind of negotiation. It's just the natural state of affairs, and it's human nature.
And even that is comparatively optimistic to the reality I see. It'd be one thing to say the problems we face, have military solutions to them. And yes, even in that situation, you have reasons to negotiate. But at least you would say, well, it's in response to a problem. I'm seeing action in response to things that don't even seem to be problems, right?
Aren't problems.
Exactly. Syria, it's not a problem for us, frankly, until we say, oh my God, we can't deal with gas. I can't even deal with chili on my own, let alone poison gas. Bomb them. It will solve the man who may or may not have killed a few people by killing many people.
Yeah.
That's our solution.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I meant by sometimes, it would be frankly even better if all we were dealing with were people who were making the wrong decisions to actual problems, but we're making bad decisions to no problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that grand? Isn't that great?
Yeah, it is grand. It's the grand epic of decline and stupidity. What was it? I forgot where it comes from. It's like arrogance and stupidity bound together in a nice little package.
Yeah. 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 That sounds something like Gore Vidal would have said.
I'm pretty sure I saw it on an old sci-fi show, but needless to say.
Well, maybe, who knows? Maybe they were influenced by him. But look, I think that John McCain, good riddance to bad rubbish, say I. And this notion that anybody who's dying is automatically a saint, what the hell is that all about? I mean, we got to be able to look at people's flaws as they are. I mean, I hated the son of a bitch when he was healthy, right? And now that divine justice is coming around, as the Grim Reaper is like, just like drooling.
I'll say this. I'll say this to John McCain. I'll try to find some nice thing I can say, and it'll be this: that rather than ghoulishly prolong the chance he has to wreak more havoc, he is willing to accept his fate.
Yep. Good. I'm so glad, because I cannot stand that guy. It was just, it's really interesting, because he's the kind of guy that on first meeting him or hearing about him, when he came into my consciousness, I thought to myself, man, he's a great guy, war hero and the whole thing, and then you get to know him more and more, and you start to realize what a horrible, horrible human being he is. He's like a Monet, looks pretty at a distance, but the closer you get, it's a big old mess, and yeah, well, Monet did that to incredible artistry, but this guy, there's nothing artistic about his life. His life is just horrible, and everything that he did, if you look into his personal life, it's not a happy stroll through the countryside. On the contrary, and there's the clear idea that he sort of like pursued his wife because she was two things: docile and rich, and there's something fundamentally scummy about him on every level, and it's just, yeah. And so everybody's going to be like, oh, John McCain, and well, the neocons are going to have a hissy fit over his death, because he was their big hero, wasn't he?
Well, and also the Democrats now, even my senator, Dick Durbin's talking about, oh, the great hero of John McCain. It's like, yeah, because he followed your orders and he allowed you to win on not on so uncertain terms. The cost being, international war, which you're more than happy to go into because you can feel like you're doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the fucking compromise happened there. Well done, chum.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And yeah, so you will see people, do that, and they'll do that as also in part to get to the president, who, frankly, said the appropriate response to John McCain, which was, yeah, I like my war heroes when they aren't captured, as
yeah.
it were. Which is, certainly, cruel, but like I said, John McCain became cruel as a result of that, and we would have been better off.
I wonder how much that must have chapped his ass when he said that about him.
Yeah, because it's just, imagine you come across as someone who has this great pain in life, and everybody around you has said the way to deal with it is to either pretend it didn't happen, or, we'll always speak, in soft whispers around it, and we won't have you worry about confronting it. And here comes, whether you like him or not, the force of nature that is Donald Trump, and says, oh yeah, that thing you don't want to talk about, fuck you, talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's something else I wanted to mention, by the way, is this notion that we have to do something. You know how many times you hear that?
Yes.
We have to do something. And before, I'd be automatically like, oh yeah, sure, we have to do something. Now I'm like, why? Why do we have to do something?
Remember when we had our discussion the other day about the tethered lifestyle, and I kept on saying that there is always this notion
your
that
audience,
if you think
that's going to
about,
appear next week, by the way. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you're gonna, there's always going to be this notion about, oh, I got to do something. I got to give the appearance of control.
Yeah. And
I'll do all these little things, and it'll, in accumulation, it'll seem like I've achieved all of these responses. And now part of this is also written large on politics as a liberal mentality, which was, we have a lot of heavy organizing and lifting we got to do here above and beyond, what the original republic was. And I don't mean that in a libertarian sense. We're like, oh, the public said it was supposed to do nothing. It's not necessarily that. It's just that even what they conceived of the things they could do pale in comparison to the things they are doing now. It's just, the size, scope, and technology of society allows you to feel like you're in control of so many things. When, back 200 years ago, you couldn't even control 90% of the shit if you wanted to.
Yeah, but there's something else. It's something peculiarly American, it seems to me. But because in Eastern Europe, if you tell people, we have to do something, they'll look at you like you're stoned. Okay, I mean, they'll say, "What the fuck are you talking about? You don't have to do shit." And they're right, you don't have to do shit. I mean, if it doesn't concern you, if it's some random problem happening halfway around the world, who cares? It's not your problem. But in America, there is this notion we have to do something. And I'm trying to understand, where exactly does this idea come from? That we have to do something, because it is a peculiarly American idea. The Western Europeans don't have it. To the extent that they do have it, I tend to feel that it's something that they caught as like a contagion, like a bug they caught from the Americans, because the Americans are the ones who say, we have to do something. I'm offhand thinking no other culture on earth has this notion that we have to do something. The Brits naturally don't have this thing, but like I said, I think it's an American import. Where does it come from? It's just a passing thought. It's not something I really want to devote much time to. But I wanted to talk about.
I could devote more, and I won't go into it in this time around. But I think it's a peculiarity to the World War II mentality.
Yeah, like an effect of that,
get me liquored up, and I'll tell you where I think it really comes from. But that's essentially my high level notion of that. You have this narrative that in the aftermath that people say, "Oh, well, something happened, then we should have done something about it now. Ergo, we always must do something." And I think certain people are more interested in that argument than others.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to another issue that happened last week. Manafort and Cohen were indicted. Indicted, I believe, right?
Cohen pled a guilty plea.
Yeah.
Manafort lost his trial, or was guilty on 8 of 18 counts or 10 of 18 counts, something along those lines.
Okay. So what happens next? Where are we going here in this saga?
My response is to simply say, I don't know. It's certainly going to continue to be an albatross across the neck of the president, in the sense that whether or not it damages him or not, it's going to be something he just has to deal with, which he ordinarily and probably would be better if he didn't have to deal with.
Yeah, of course, undeniably.
And this will continue. I certainly don't know what Cohen can say or not say, but my response to all attitudes is, if this leads to the whole question of impeachment, which certainly people on the left really wanted to, these things are a matter of political will, more so than right or wrong, more so than what the evidence says or not.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, this will be something of a test, surely. It will test the resolve of the opposition to us who want to see this president torn asunder and how much strength they can muster. It will be a test of our side to see if they can understand what the stakes really are, or if they play the games of, it's like, oh, there's nothing really nefarious about this investigation. We should just let it, reveal what the truth is, and everything. That's the mentality of someone who doesn't know that they're playing a game of musical chairs and half the chairs are already gone. And you better, if you're going to
those naive conservatives who don't understand that it has nothing to do with the truth or justice, and it's basically a political street fight. That's what's going on. This is trying to find a gotcha moment to get rid of Trump, and amusingly install Mike Pence as president, who in many ways would be more sympathetic to the Democrats. But on other issues, the social issues, I think would be much more conservative, though I don't know if he'd implement those.
Did you see that little post? I think it was Sticks had today, which was basically, okay, here's how we'll play the game. If they impeach Trump, Trump will resign, Pence will become president. Pence will then appoint Trump as vice president. Then he himself will resign, and Trump will become president, and then appoint Pence the vice president again.
What?
It's a joke, but I think technically it can happen. Which is to say, okay, if you want to play games, I'll play musical chairs games, and then say I'll resign, and then you go through this exercise.
Putin, what's his name?
When Putin puts what's his face on as Medvedev as the president, Putin becomes the prime minister until he's allowed to run again. Then he's back again as
and changes the law so he can stay forever. Yeah,
exactly. Fuck, if you want to play this game, we'll play this game. That's the kind of humor I have to have in this situation. And the other, it just shows you how cynically the game is being played and how naive and like a fiddle so many people on our side and the other side operate on. Is when I think it was last weekend, and I think Giuliani, for whatever reason, was talking to Chuck Todd, I think, and Giuliani's point about the whole point of them wanting Trump to appear for an interview is so they can get him on some sort of technicality issue, because he says, but and then I think Chuck Todd's response is like, well, isn't the truth always the truth? And Giuliani says, no, it's not. Truth isn't always the truth, and we all know the reality of what he means. Any lawyer could tell you that objective truth is a lie, or not a lie in the courtroom, but that notion is false.
Yeah.
That what really happens is, there is several interpretations of what can be said. The goal is to try and trick you out and get you for all these technical matters so they can punish you in that regard.
Yeah.
And Chuck Todd, is, he's certainly not the smartest man in the room, but I think he knows the reality of how it can be used, but is playing the audience like a fiddle. And then you always have the players who said, well, he should just, if he has nothing to fear, he should just trust the system. That, it's a bad, the idea that there's a system you can trust is
laughable.
The most ludicrous, the most ludicrous religion I've seen in the past 10 years.
Well, it's the mentality of children. Okay. The idea that you can trust the system and that the system will do right by you. In my own case, I recall very clearly when I discovered this, to my regret, I've talked about this before. I was accused of sexual assault and harassment while in college. And the truth, the evidence, everything was on my side. Everything that I'd said was true and could be proven to be true with witnesses and alibis and evidence. And everything that my accuser had accused me of, the things that could be proven to be false, that could prove to be a lie, were lies. She had lied, and it was obvious. And yet I was found guilty because it was politically more expedient. Because I wasn't looking at the political situation. I was looking at just, this naive notion that the truth will out. No, the truth doesn't out. Or let me phrase that. The truth might out eventually, but it won't matter in the contingent political event. And that's the thing. It's the attitude of naive children to think that the system will save you. It's for naive children and people who are powerless. Yeah, those are the only two people. The system will not save you. The system is there to give you the illusion of justice, but not actual justice. Because perhaps in a very real sense, there can never be real justice. And so we just manufacture it. Maybe that's the correct approach insofar as justice is concerned.
We have a conception of justice which requires a divine omniscience in order to properly deliver, but we're human, and the best we can do is tart up revenge and power.
Yeah. Well, insofar as the Trump situation is concerned, I think that look, all of this is sound and fury signifying nothing until after the midterms. The midterms are the key issue. You know that in Ohio, was it the Trump candidate was finally declared the winner? I think it was I forget it was governor or that shows.
I thought it was either I thought it may have been a Congress seat, but regardless, whichever one.
That shows how politically on top of shit we are. But the point I wanted to make is that in midterms, Trump sweeps, Trump's candidates win big. It's curtains for all this shit. It'll just go away. Because the Republicans are going to be like, we're not going to fucking support it, because either the Republicans who are not going to support it are going to be Trump's guys, or they could even be never Trumpers who are going to be smart enough to realize, I'm not going to go against this fucker because he's got the whole shit in his pocket, right? And so the Democrats are going to be in a weaker political position insofar as the people they have in Congress, and and they're going to be even more disorganized and more in chaos if they suffer a big defeat in November. So I think that November is really it. I think that Trump should just focus on campaigning as hard as possible and ignore everything except campaigning, and trolling the shit out of the liberals, and hopefully we get another statement like America was never great. That was golden. That was absolutely golden. When did that happen? Internet time is so fast. Was this week or?
I think it was just 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
That was golden. But I'm not in the United States, so I don't know how they're campaigning. Are the Republicans pushing this shit? Are they really campaigning hard on this stuff, or what?
I don't follow it day in and day out, but I feel like I would have heard a lot more then if they really did know what they were doing, then I am kind of peripherally hearing. So I'm pretty sure they're losing an opportunity per usual.
Yeah, because that was golden. Yep, I saw Wild Smile. He made this great video with all these clips of all the craziness of the Dems, right? Just running that video. It was just basically clips of shit that they've said. And they sounded unhinged. And if the Republican Party just ran that ad relentlessly, you know, which was just, like I said, clips that the Dems had said, they'd win in a cakewalk because the Dems looked unhinged. And oh man, by the way, I've been watching some videos of Ocasio-Cortez, man, without the sound. She looks crazy. She looks out of her fucking mind. I mean, it's not like Sanpaku eyes. It's not like 3 whites. It's 4 whites. It's her eyes are bulging out of her skull. She looks like she's ready to pick up a knife and start slashing at you. You know what I mean? I mean, she's like the...
Why so serious? Socialism. Yeah, exactly. And she's like the Joker, but with even worse politics.
And worse makeup. Anyway,
yeah.
No, that was a cheap shot. Anyway.
I think it's a fair shot.
I'd do her. I don't have a problem doing it. Yeah, but I'd do anything, you know. So I'm like a low bar. But
we're putting that on record. You know, Coach will do anything. Coach will out trap porn Alex Jones.
Oh yeah. Oh, and look, I love this headline in the New York Times. Stormy Daniels, feminist hero. Oh God. Oh God. I mean, Jesus Christ. Anyway, what else has happened in the news? I mean, I'm like you're like the smart guy. You're on top of all this shit. Anything good happening?
I'm the smart guy by not being on top of all of this shit. Remember, I've said this like 7 or 8 times that the goal of life is to mitigate this. Oh, one good thing. The Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull is out. Unfortunately, we did not get the right-wing candidate, which I would have preferred. We have a compromise candidate. But yeah, a lot of the sort of mealy-mouth, weak-ass, sort of right-of-center / in American context, like moderate, slightly lefty, you know, European-like countries, you know, a lot of them are on the ropes in their own way. I'm happy to see Turnbull go away. I'm sure Scott Morrison isn't necessarily better, but you know, there is a crisis within a lot of these parties, you know, thinking to themselves, you know, which way Western man kind of question to go along the lines of the meme. And so I hope to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, you know, the Justin Trudeau in Quebec, right? He was called out by some woman there, some older woman, some like late middle-aged woman, okay? And he was giving some speech and about the illegal immigrants and how they were using up social services and why was it that she would have to pay for all this stuff because it wasn't fair.
Yeah.
And he called her a racist and
he basically said, you have no place in Canada.
Yeah.
Even though she's lived here longer than he's been alive.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she was clearly Quebecois Canadian, right? Her accent, you could tell right away. And it was shocking that the guy would just dismiss her as a racist and say basically you don't belong here. And his security people just went at her, you know, and she was just some random you know, woman here. And also what was really interesting about the video, if you see it, there's some quisling little fuck who started, you know, saying, oh, she's saying racist things, or she's saying threatening things, or hate speech, or something like that, you know, some, you know, bugaboo that would get everybody riled up. And she wasn't. She was making perfectly legitimate questions that you would ask. She was basically saying, because a lot of the migrants were going through Quebec, and she was asking, well, why is it that Quebec has to pay for all this stuff? Why won't it be like the federal Canadian government to do it? And the way she was treated, and I've heard from a lot of people that he's not going to win any kind of re-election. I mean, he's becoming deeply unpopular. But I don't know how true that is. I don't know enough about Canadian politics to see if there's going to be a right-wing replacement for the guy.
Well, if like a lot of countries, you know, never under bet on the possibility that the right-wing political party finds a way to fuck it up. I mean, the mainstream right-wing political party, right?
Yeah.
So Canada is set for another election. Let me see when it should be.
Yeah.
I'm looking it up now. 2019. So literally within a year.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm looking at the polling right now, and it looks to be. It looks like it was neck and neck, and it's kind of going back and forth. But yeah, it's like here's the low bar of improvement we set for you, and we'll all of the main parties just trip and kind of land under it. You know what I mean? That's the nature of political organization. And it's, again, remember what, it's like the thing I've said before, when you think the stakes, you have all of these high stakes and you're worried, you're going to start second guessing, triple guessing, quadruple guessing, so on and so forth, everything until the point where you've sanitized everything to the point where nobody thinks you're anything but full of shit anyway.
Yeah.
And I feel like Canada is like a great country for that. Because I mean, in an honest society, Justin Trudeau wouldn't just not be the prime minister. For that little stunt he should be, tarred and feathered and thrown into, the Hudson Bay.
Yeah. Yeah.
For that little
just for that attitude towards a legitimate question from a citizen. It was a perfectly legitimate question. And to shit all over her was just wrong. I mean, because
remember that kind of attitude cost Gordon Brown probably his election in 2010. Was it? Remember 8 years ago when
dreadful
Gordon
woman. Yeah.
Going around, some woman. I forgot what her argument was. I think it was a similar kind of idea.
Yeah, and he said dreadful woman, racist or something.
His mic was on.
Yeah,
or whatever.
He had a hot mic. Yeah,
hot mic, and he was either got in his car, or he was going somewhere. He said, the dreadfully racist woman, and people lambasted. They said, "Look, this is just proof positive that Gordon just is so out of touch with everybody. Doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about." He had to apologize for that one. I don't think Trudeau is going to be encouraged.
Yeah. No, well, Justin Trudeau is different because, see, I tend to think that to the degree that a politician actually recognizes a political damage, it becomes damaging. I think that one of the great strengths of Trump is that he doesn't care how politically damaging something might be, and because of he doesn't care about it, it doesn't have political damage. It's like with a woman, okay? If you kowtow to the woman, and like, oh, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and all the rest of it, then, you lose power to her. But if you're like, yeah, I did it, so what? You gain power, or at least the sin that you committed does not affect you. And I think it's the same with politics, because ultimately the electorate is like a woman. And, you treat that electorate firmly and don't apologize to it, and the electorate is going to forgive you, a little bit like an abused wife. Yeah. And it sounds awful to say it, but yeah, I think that that's basically it. And I think that in the case of Gordon Brown, the very fact that he recognized the political mistake he had made it more egregious, whereas Justin Trudeau, because he's an empty-headed imbecile, he won't even realize that what he said was wrong, and therefore it will not damage him that much. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if you agree or not.
Certainly, but it's certainly possible that he, in the society he lives in, it won't be considered a scandal for him. Mm-hmm. I think the reality of the situation is that I would just very much love to see him be put away.
Me too.
In a very substantial kind of way.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like I said, Canada is a tough nut to crack. By that I mean, it just feels like they have the worst.
Canadians are so fucking stupid.
They have, like they said, they have the worst. They take the worst part of British culture, the worst part of American culture, combine it and say, this is Canadian values.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think that the smarter, cleverer Canadians are generally the ones who either have left or are considered crazy within the Canadian worldview. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, I think that look, I admire Canadians. They're how could I put this? I've crossed all of Canada. I think it's an amazing country, and I think that it's a beautiful country, and it's a harsh land, but in the cities, it's just too easy, and they've allowed it to become too easy. I don't know. It's just. I'm of two minds because on the one hand, I love they're so polite and so friendly and helpful and clean. Or at least when I was there, it was very clean. This was like, I don't know, 2000, 2001. So I don't know how it's been in the last, almost 20 years. But everything was so wonderful when I was there, right? Just pristine and perfect. On the one hand, I admire that. On the other hand, they seem like just such fucking pushovers. They seem so goddamn passive, okay? And perhaps you could say, well, the passivity is an expression of their politeness, or their politeness is an expression of that passivity. Yeah, it could be true. You know, that very niceness is a byproduct of their passivity, and the passivity is what allows them to be invaded and pushed around by horrible people. Yeah, it could be that. I'm of two minds about it. You know, the idea of the United States going out and conquering Canada, it would be like, you know, why bother? You know?
Well, there's a great line or joke about Canadians that says, how do you get 5 drunken, irate Canadians out of the pool? You say, excuse me, guys, can you please get out of the pool?
Yeah. They're just not... Look, ultimately, I look back on world history and European history, and I think of the post-Roman Empire history of Europe. It was, you know, the Dark Ages. It was a basket case. It was a wasteland. Nobody wanted to go there. It was basically Africa. That's what it was. It was Africa. And because of the harsh climate, the harsh times, you know, the Europeans had to get their shit together. And over a number of centuries, you know, they just developed. And here we are at the apogee of that development, and it's fading. And I how can I put it? I think to myself, what's to be done? And then I say, well, there's nothing to be done. You know, it's just the natural cycle of civilizations of peoples. You know, that they're going to be, you know, that this is what's going to happen. You know, Rome, of course. The Italians today are not descendants of Romans. The Italians today are descendants of all the hordes of people who invaded Rome, because Rome was the apogee, the empire, the dominant empire. And so these hordes of people, poor people from other places, came to Rome to make their fortune and invaded and assimilated and eventually wiped out the original Romans. There are no Romans alive today. I mean, Roman descendants, if you will. Okay. Those people were wiped out by the lesser people who invaded, okay? And Rome became Italy. The glory of Rome led to the basket case of Italy, right? Yeah, I think that's basically, we have to be resigned and, you know, wonder to ourselves, where will be the next, you know, shining city, the shining city on the hill, the great empire? Where will be the great people? Where will they go? And you have to go there and wait a few hundred years. I think that's the only solution. Is that black-pilled enough for you?
Well, it's certainly black-pilled. I don't think there is going to be a better society. I think there'll be another one that takes over, but I don't think you're going to have the replacement. And I don't even think the Chinese are going to pull it off. The Chinese, you know, I think we oversell the Chinese capability to be a great something. You know, they'll fuck it up like everybody else does. Yeah, you know, I think this... You know, this may very well be it. I don't know, in terms of human accomplishment for a while, until we kind of get things figured out.
Yeah, and so on that cheerful note, we're going to end the podcast because, now like all depressed. You know, that's what we've been doing. You know, we got to do something shiny, happy. You know, to make the people happy. We got to do something shiny, happy, like all white pills and just, you know, rainbows and unicorns and shit. You know, one of these episodes, we're going to call it Rainbows and Unicorns. And by the time we're done with it, you're going to be so fucking happy. But for now, you're just going to have to, on this episode at least, you're just going to have to be mildly suicidal at the end of this episode. But don't worry, you know, you might be mildly suicidal, but I'm sure that by the next episode, you'll be fully suicidal. So, Dr. Benway, I'm going to leave you, as always, with a final word of the episode. And that final word is...
I got nothing that will keep you happy, so perhaps I should just say, I don't know, straighten up and fly right.
Straighten up and fly right. That's something they should have told John McCain, now shouldn't they? Okay, and on that cheerful note, we'll bid you a fond farewell. Thank you very much. This has been the Coach and Benway podcast, and we will catch you next time.
Later.